Stopping your first 6 minutes, a repeat sex offender could be moving to Davenport. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharon DeRee.
I'm Gary Mativier. Ben Sanders is currently at the Civil Commitment Unit for Sexual Offenders in Cherokee, Iowa. But tomorrow morning, there will be a hearing on whether to transport him to Scott County.
KWQC's Kaya Edwards joins us now in the newsroom. And Kaya, some people are very concerned about this happening.
Court records show that Sanders has a history of violent rape with at least 2 convictions, one where he broke into a home, bound and gagged a man, and then raped his wife. Now, there's a hearing tomorrow that will decide whether he'll be moved to Scott County. And Alderman Ray Ambrose says he believes that he could end up living in Davenport in an apartment.
It was my understanding they've already been here looking for apartments. That's why it was brought to my attention.
Alderman Ray Ambrose says a local landlord recently contacted him, saying someone called him requesting to house Ben Sanders, a repeat sex offender.
85% of them are habitual offenders, yet the court keeps on dumping them back into our neighborhoods.
Ambrose says they were trying to get Sanders to bypass living here at the 7th Judicial District Department of Correction Services.
605 Main Street.
The facility works somewhat similarly to a halfway house.
It's right across the street from the high school.
Ambrose says Sanders will likely have to check in there. The director did not want to go on camera until after the hearing, but he does tell us this would be the first time someone from the sex offenders unit in Cherokee could be transported to the facility in Davenport.
Very disappointing, the secretive 7th Judicial District, and this has been a little bit of a history with them.
Whether Sanders ends up living here or not, Ambrose says he's against having a sex offender released in our area in general.
It's unfair to the honest, hardworking taxpayers, their families, and to our neighborhoods.
And some people agree.
Well, that particular transitional housing has been there for a long time, and so is Central High School. But if sexual offenders are down there, then no, they shouldn't be around kids.
I think those criminals should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. And if that isn't enough, like if the community feels like that isn't enough, then I think communities should unite to change the laws.
When sex offenders are released, they are required to register as a sex offender before they can leave the jail, and then the Scott County Sheriff's Office is then responsible for notifying the community. Live in the newsroom, Kaya Edwards, KWQC-TV 6 News.
Kaya, thank you. Sanders was declared a sexual violent predator. He appealed that ruling in 2012, but the Court of Appeals denied his request because the court was concerned he was likely to reoffend. Our top story now, a convicted violent sexual predator soon to be on the streets of Davenport. We want to warn you, some of the content you're about to hear is graphic. Ben Sanders, the man you see here, has multiple convictions of violently raping women. And now the decision. He will be released in our community. KWQC's Tiffany Lewis in court and joins us in the studio with the latest on this story tonight. Tiffany?
Gary, many people are on edge about Ben Sanders coming to Davenport. He has a long history of violence dating back 50 years, and we've mapped out some of it for you here. In 1965, he broke into a woman's home, tied her husband up, and raped her. He was released less than a decade later in 1973, but was back behind bars after he broke into a home and was shot by the woman living there. Then in 1980, while he was on a weekend furlough from prison, Sanders forced his way into a neighbor's house, quote, expecting sex. Again in 1986, he raped another woman soon after getting out of prison. Sanders was declared a sexually violent predator in 2012. Since then, he's been at a treatment program for sexual offenders. And today in court, the judge says he will be released and approved to live in Davenport. That's tough to hear from his first victim, the woman from 1965. She is still traumatized from the attack, and tonight she's speaking out.
Oh, I'm losing it.
It's still a fresh wound. Every detail is clear of a rape that happened in 1965.
We have a light at the stairs, and we seen this guy standing there.
The victim says Ben Sanders tied her husband up, and her 3 kids were in the house at the time.
He threw me on the couch, pointed the gun at my temple, and raped me. He held the gun to my head all the time he was raping me.
She remembers the gun was cold as he pressed it against her head.
49 years and I'm still on the psychiatric care.
Trying to wipe the painful memories.
When they arrested him, he still had the same clothes and shoes on of the night when he raped me.
This woman, one of Ben Sanders' victims, tried to commit suicide 7 times.
I wanted the people to know what I'm going through for these 50 years. And I didn't want him in Davenport. I don't know how I'm going to sleep now.
And Thursday in court, she and her family were there to protest Sanders' release. Her daughters, now grown, were all in tears.
They can say, well, doesn't it mean something that he hasn't reoffended since 1987? No, he's been in custody.
The oldest was 4 years old and remembers seeing Sanders in the home before the rape.
I remember what Mom was like before, and we used to watch movies and eat popcorn and color and play Candyland, and afterwards we never played anymore.
One man's violence changed the life of this family, who have tried to remain private over the past 50 years.
Does it mean anything to us that he's going to be under restrictions? Absolutely not.
But now they speak out and want to warn the public.
If you can reoffend when you're in custody on work release, you can reoffend with an ankle bracelet on.
Sanders has been undergoing sex offender treatment for the past several years, which is why they are allowing him to be released. The Department of Corrections and the judge say their top priority is keeping the community safe. Ben Sanders will have several restrictions as a registered sex offender, and this includes an ankle bracelet, parole supervision, a curfew, employment restrictions, no unsupervised interaction with minors, no alcohol or drugs, and of course continued treatment. The Department of Corrections is looking for an approved apartment in Davenport, and Sanders could be living in Davenport within the next few months. Gary?
All right, thank you. Alderman Ray Ambrose told us in our report last night that he is opposed to this release and says it is dangerous for the people of Davenport.
It's unfair to the honest, hardworking taxpayers, their families, and to our neighborhoods.
Alderman Ambrose says he did not know about the possibility of Sanders moving to Davenport until a local landlord contacted him. That landlord told Ambrose he was asked to house Ben Sanders. It's a story you can count on KWQC to continue to follow for you. And right now, a number of apartments are under consideration to house him. Once that decision has been made, we will, of course, let you know.
Live from the KWQC Broadcast Center, this is TV6 News at 6.
A serial rapist moving to Iowa, to Davenport precisely. Tonight, we ask what will be done to keep the community safe. New information tonight on a story we have been closely following for the past 2 days. A violent sexual predator and convicted rapist being released onto the streets of Davenport. Many of you obviously very concerned about this story with this man, Ben Sanders, being released from a commitment unit for sex offenders. We continue our coverage tonight. We wanted to know how law enforcement plans to keep us safe. KWQC's Tiffany Liu asking the hard questions and joins us in the studio, hopefully with some answers tonight.
Gary, I spoke with Lieutenant Bryce Schmidt from the Scott County Sheriff's Office. They will do all they can to protect the people of Davenport. Take a look at the map. This shows all the registered sex offenders within 10 miles of where I'm standing now. And one man whose dot will be added to this map soon is getting extra attention tonight.
There are 347 registered sex offenders in Scott County.
It is a concern that we have, when the numbers never go down, the numbers always continue to increase.
Lieutenant Schmidt says that's the second highest in the state of Iowa.
Here we're having, these committal processes and civil committals, and now people are starting to come out, and it's not your typical situation.
Ben Sanders is one of the sex offenders that he is referring to. Sanders is being released from the Civil Commitment Unit of Sex Offenders in Cherokee, Iowa, after serving time for multiple violent rapes.
It heightens our awareness a little bit, and it's an uneasy feeling.
The rest of the community is also on edge, but Schmidt assures they are putting their highest level plan in place.
Level 3s are pretty rare. We don't do very many level 3 notifications.
The Sex Offender Task Force will be tracking Sanders' arrival.
You're always worried about anyone that's had a violent past history, that not only that they're going to commit another violent offense, but that it may result in a kidnapping.
They will also notify the media, all schools, and go door to door informing neighbors and businesses.
We want to go that extra mile as far as notifications and do as much as we can.
The Sheriff's Office will also conduct home compliance checks and work with the Department of Corrections to track him with an ankle bracelet.
Especially if he's on GPS. The GPS has been very effective in this area. When they come out, we just do as much as we possibly can do within our ability to keep people safe.
At the Civil Commitment Unit for Sex Offenders, Sanders went through a 5-phase treatment plan that includes therapy, psychological evaluations, and a transition program to help the sex offenders get back into the community. The facility says they only discharge patients after the court has determined they are ready. Gary?
Meanwhile, Davenport Alderman Ray Ambrose just released a strongly worded statement regarding the release of Ben Sanders. It says in part, quote, "It is unfair to law enforcement and it's unfair to the good people of Davenport and Scott County that the judicial system continues to release habitual offenders that rape, murder, and rob back into our community only to have them reoffend over and over and over again." We have the full statement of Alderman Ambrose on our website right now at KWQC.com, and we do have a call into the court system requesting an interview with the judge mentioned in that. Right now, a number of apartments are under consideration to house Sanders. Once that decision has been made, we will, of course, let you know.
Live from the KWQC Broadcast Center, this is TV6 News at 6.
Campaign at the pump, the proposed gas tax increase to try to create smoother driving conditions.
The ultimate goal is public safety. The public can be confident and take this job very seriously.
Exclusive access behind the scenes at the Department of Corrections, what they do to protect the community. Thanks for joining us at 6. I'm Paula Sands.
And I'm Gary Mativier, a convicted sexual predator soon to be on the streets of Davenport, a story we first brought you last week.
A judge ruled that Ben Sanders could be released to live in an apartment in Davenport. Sanders has multiple convictions for the violent rape of several women. Hundreds of you have sent us emails and Facebook comments about this case, concerned about how the public would be protected.
We went to the Department of Corrections looking for those answers. In a KWQC News exclusive, Tiffany Liu asks the hard questions and takes us on a behind-the-scenes look at how offenders are tracked.
We do care. And, we live in the community. We want to make sure that our neighbors are safe. We want to make sure that our wives and our husbands are safe.
It takes multiple agencies to make sure sex offenders are on track and away from reoffending, and multiple programs to help keep the community safe, starting with this GPS tracker that they have to wear around their ankle 24/7.
Put the device on.
We tested it firsthand.
Follow all the rules.
Okay.
And if you're good, we'll take it off tomorrow.
A buzzer warning and a light turn on as soon as a sex offender steps into an exclusion zone. Immediately, the Iowa Department of Correctional Services is notified.
When they go into a victim zone, we're going to respond and then get them from that zone.
Probation parole officer Richard Alexiashik says they will get caught right away.
They can track your speed, your direction of travel, so we can determine whether you're on foot, whether you're riding a bicycle, whether you're in a vehicle.
The GPS tracker pinpoints any location.
555, 27 mile per hour, you just entered an exclusion zone.
Exclusion zones are customized to the offender. It could mean schools, fairgrounds, or even a victim's home.
I call it that friendly tug on the ankle, that when they think they might want to do something they shouldn't do, that little GPS device on the ankle will tell them somebody's watching.
There are those who push the boundaries and break the rules.
Could go back to incarceration because of that.
The DOC team says it really does work. The ankle bracelet is one of their best devices, but it takes more than a GPS tracker to be successful.
The offender goes through a number of assessments to determine risks as well as need.
Programs teamed with tracking enforcement. They say they're confident the system works.
I don't know of another task force in Iowa or Illinois that's banded together and networked like this, like the Scott County Sex Offender Task Force.
Within seconds of taking off my test ankle bracelet, the DOC was notified of the tamper.
Yes, we just removed the test bracelet on test Tiffany, yes. So thank you for the call.
Every step taken in whichever direction, sex offenders are being monitored for two reasons. First, to make sure they're successfully re-entering the society, and second, to keep the public away from harm. Reporting in Davenport, Tiffany Liu, KWQC, TV6 News.
And with all that, there is no guarantee the sex offender will not reoffend. That is why the Department of Correctional Services has a number of additional programs, including the Sex Offender Treatment Program. And right now, there are 4 apartment complexes in Davenport approved for Ben Sanders to live in. So far, no decision has been made. We'll let you know as soon as the decision comes down.
Many of you have been weighing in with strong responses to the news throughout the day.
Scott County officers going door to door today notifying neighbors that 68-year-old Ben Sanders would be coming to live in the 1400 block of Bridge Avenue next Tuesday. KWQC's Kai Edwards joins us now with community reaction tonight.
Ben Sanders was convicted multiple times of violently raping women. He has been living at a treatment facility in Cherokee, Iowa for the past several years, but come Tuesday, this is where he's expected to live. It is less than 1 mile from 2 schools, Sudlow Intermediate and Washington Elementary.
It's kind of like, this is really getting ready to happen.
As a mom to a 6-year-old, Tanya Lacefield is already alert.
I'm like, like this, lurking out, seeing what's going on.
She says she'll be even more cautious now that Ben Sanders, a sexually violent predator, will be moving near her home near Washington, where her son goes to school.
I would be concerned. I wouldn't be able to keep my son out my sight.
Sanders is expected to live in an apartment on Bridge Avenue. McKinley School is about 1.5 miles away, and Emily Kelting, also a parent,
I have 3 daughters,
says even that distance is too close for comfort.
It's a little scary to have him that close. Hopefully they can keep tabs on him and see where he's at.
Before he arrives, the Scott County Sheriff's Office is communicating with neighbors, dropping off flyers and explaining firsthand. Mike Cooney says the information helps.
Not my neighborhood, not here.
But it's not enough. He wants Sanders to live elsewhere.
I found out today that there's a violent predator moving right downstairs from me where I live. I have a 10-year-old son. Not good. I'm not happy about this.
Moving out of the question.
No, I'm not going to scare me away from my home. Nope.
So he's passing on safety tips to his son.
Talked to him when I picked him up from school. He was asking questions. What does he look like, Dad? Just so I kind of pointed him out and showed him the picture and stuff just to make sure he knows what's going on and who to look for.
And neighbors Joy Gordon and Corey Garrett,
We're roommates. We just moved in here.
say they'll be looking out for each other and for others in the community.
I trust this neighborhood. I trust this community. So I think we'll be fine.
Wishing Sanders the best.
We wish him good luck. Good luck.
Despite his disturbing past.
Everybody deserves a second chance.
I hope he learns his lesson. I hope he's bettered himself.
At the same time, my heart tells me we've got kids, and it's just nerve-wracking.
In Davenport, Kaya Edwards, KWQC-TV 6 News.
Now, detectives say the public should not take action against Ben Sanders, but keep an eye out and call police if he appears to be engaging in suspicious activity. First at 6, a change of plans for relocating a convicted violent rapist to Davenport. Good evening, I'm Gary Mativier.
I'm Paula Sands. The Scott County Sheriff's Office announced today that multiply convicted sex offender Ben Sanders will not be moving to the Bridge Avenue neighborhood as originally planned. We've been following this story since January of this year when it was first released that Ben Sanders planned to move to the Quad Cities. Then again last week, we broke the news that Sanders was about to move here. He has a history of sexual violence dating back 50 years. The 68-year-old now has been staying at a treatment facility in Cherokee, Iowa. Today, the Scott County Sheriff's Office notified us that he will not make that move to Davenport now. A reason has not been given.
Many neighbors had fears about the possibility of a violent sex offender moving in nearby. He would have lived in an apartment on Bridge Avenue with McKinley School about 1.5 miles away.
I mean, he could just walk. Anybody can walk along. I mean, the school's right there on the playground, so.
I don't want to sit there and be judgmental because I don't know his actual situation, to be honest, but as far as I'm concerned, it's still raising a red flag.
I don't think there's anywhere you can really prepare yourself for something like this. I mean, and he chose to do what he did, so, but no, there's never enough notice.
There is still a possibility that Ben Sanders could move to the area at a later date. If that happens, the Sex Offender Task Force will notify the public.